Welcome back. US President Donald Trump says the Iranian Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei should be careful with his words. Yesterday, during a Friday sermon, Khamenei said Iran's missile strike on US targets in Iraq was a slap on America's face. In a tweet, Trump said the Iranian leadership must abandon terrorism and make their country great again. President Trump said Iranians who love America deserve a government that helps them achieve their dreams instead of killing them. The US president said Iran's top leader has not been a supreme leader. In the meantime, the US has imposed sanctions on senior Iranian military official Brigadier General Hassan Shehwarpour. The State Department took steps against the general over a crackdown on anti-government protesters. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is urging Iran to send the black boxes from a destroyed Ukrainian Airlines plane to France. At an Ottawa news conference, Trudeau said France is one of the few countries which can decode the plane's data black boxes. He said Iran does not have the technical expertise to quickly analyze the damaged data recorders. The Prime Minister said Canada will compensate families of the crash victims. Trudeau said they will receive nearly $20,000 per victim. He said Canada still expects Iran to financially compensate victims' families for their loss. 57 Canadian nationals died when the civilian passenger plane was hit by an Iranian air defense missile. The UK says it's freezing Hezbollah's assets, adding the Lebanese movement to its terrorism blacklist. The move follows last year's decision to list the group as a terrorist organization because of its destabilizing influence in the Middle East. The foreign minister's move covers the entire organization as well as its military wing. The opposition Labour Party has questioned whether the finance ministry decision is based on new evidence or political opportunism. Israel welcomed the measure, saying Europe is waking up to the threat posed by Iran's proxies. There was no immediate reaction from Hezbollah. The sanctions come amid continued wrangling in Lebanon over the formation of a new government. Pakistan's Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi says Islamabad will continue to play its role for peace in the Middle East. Meeting U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo in Washington, Qureshi said peace in South Asia is impossible without the resolution of the Kashmir issue. He said Kashmiris must be given their right to self-determination. Pompeo lauded Pakistan's efforts for peace in Afghanistan. Pakistan's Foreign Office condemns Indian Chief of Defence Staff's suggestion of putting Kashmiri children into so-called de-radicalization camps. In a statement, the Foreign Office said such remarks reflect extremist mindset of India's state institutions. It said India has turned Kashmir into the world's largest prison, with 8 million locked up since August last year. The Foreign Office said over 900,000 Indian occupation forces are committing inhumane atrocities on Kashmiris. It said Pakistan has consistently sensitized the world to India's malicious campaign, hoping the FATF to reject such designs. India has said it will invite Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan to the annual meeting of Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Pakistan and India joined the China-led bloc in 2017, and New Delhi is hosting the meeting for the first time late this year. Talking to media, Indian Foreign Ministry spokesman Ravish Kumar said all 8 members of the SCO will be invited for the summit. He said the decision to accept the invitation will be on Pakistan's Premier Imran Khan. If Khan decides to come, it will be his first visit to India as Prime Minister. Tensions between Pakistan and India are high since August 5th, when Delhi abrogated occupied Kashmir's special status. In India, countrywide all-women protests and sit-ins continue against new controversial citizenship law. Women activists and students held a massive rally against the law in Mumbai, chanting anti-government slogans. The women in Kota city of Rajasthan state have launched an indefinite sit-in against the act. The organizers said the act is a black law and against the spirit of the Indian Constitution. The Uttar Pradesh government has booked over 200 people for organizing a sit-in in the city of Piraj. Meanwhile, Shaheen Bagh demonstrators in New Delhi have refused to end sit-in until the government withdraws the act. China's President Xi Jinping has promised to usher in a new era of ties with Myanmar. This statement comes after President Xi visited Myanmar to support Aung San Suu Kyi's embattled government. President Xi said joint efforts to build a China-Myanmar community will boost bilateral relations. He said China is ready to work with Myanmar to advance practical cooperation and speed up the Belt and Road Initiative. President Xi expected to sign a $1.3 billion deal to build a port in Rakhine State. Suu Kyi said Myanmar appreciates and cherishes China's long-term support. In addition to being its largest investor, Beijing has become an indispensable ally for Naypyidaw as it reels from Western isolation over the Rohingya crisis. Indonesia has released a ship with South Korean crew members after almost 100 days of detention. The country's Navy seized the Panama flag vessel on October 9th for violating its territorial waters. South Korean officials said the captain's documents were returned before he was allowed to leave the country. The shipping company said the crew members appear to be in good health. Indonesia seized another South Korean cargo ship, the CH Bella, last week. It is still being held in the country on the same charges. Now from news in the Middle East, in Iraq, at least 2 protesters have been killed and 25 others injured in central Baghdad. Security forces have used tear gas to disperse demonstrators trying to breach the capital's Sinak Bridge. Authorities say one canister hit a demonstrator directly in his chest, killing him. Medics say dozens of protesters are suffering with breathing problems. Demonstrations against the political system have rocked Baghdad and Iraq's south for the last 3 months. Over 460 people have been killed in Iraq's mass protests since October 1st. The UN Human Rights Chief Michelle Bachelet has called for an immediate end to hostilities in Syria's opposition-held Idlib province. Turkey and Russia agreed to a truce in war-torn Idlib on January 9th. In a statement, Bachelet said the latest ceasefire attempt has failed to protect civilians. Bachelet said the airstrikes resumed on January 15th. UN human rights spokesman Jeremy Lawrence said civilians are being targeted on a daily basis in missile attacks from air and ground.
It is deeply distressing that civilians are being killed on a daily basis in missile strikes from both the air and the ground. Women, men and children simply carrying out everyday activities at the workplace, in markets and at schools are being killed and maimed in senseless violence.
Earlier, Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan said the Syrian government forces have killed 20 people in violation of a ceasefire in Idlib. Speaking in Istanbul, Erdogan accused Syrian President Bashar al-Assad of lies over claims the civilians killed in Idlib are terrorists. Erdogan said he will discuss the situation with his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin in Berlin on Sunday. The region is the last stronghold of rebels fighting government forces since 2015. In Somalia, 40 militants from Al-Shabaab have been killed by the National Army. A military official says the militants attacked a base in the Middle Shabelle region in southern Somalia. The military said over 30 assailants were wounded during the firefight. The Defense Ministry says 4 soldiers also died, with 3 others wounded during the attack. In the meantime, the military says 8 militants were killed in a separate skirmish in the state of Jubaland. The militant group also attacked a police station in the southwestern town of Afkioy. Police officials confirmed the attack without providing information on casualties. An international conference on the conflict in Libya will take place in Germany's capital, Berlin, tomorrow. Officials say draft conclusions of the conference emphasize the importance of forming a unified government for the country. The US, Russia, Turkey, and Germany will meet with the warring sides at the conference. A draft communique says the summit will push rival parties to agree to a truce and monitoring mechanism as the first step to peace. Yesterday, the UK called the conference an important step to securing a Libyan ceasefire. In a tweet, British Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab wrote his country is committed to uniting all sides behind UN's peace efforts. In news on protests and domestic politics, in Algeria, thousands of protesters have marched to pressurize the newly formed government and demand political reforms across the country. This marks the 48th consecutive weekly protest of a movement that has already toppled a veteran president and jailed top officials. President Abdelmadjid Tebboune was elected last month to replace veteran leader Abdelaziz Bouteflika. Chanting slogans against the president, protesters said the elections were not transparent and called the old power elite illegitimate. In Malawi, thousands of people have taken to the streets in capital Lilongwe against alleged attempts to bribe the judges. This comes after 5 judges overseeing the re-election case of President Peter Mutharika were allegedly offered kickbacks. The complaint to the Anti-Corruption Bureau has sparked calls for demonstrations. Opposition leaders say last year's poll was tainted by fraud. President Mutharika has brushed off doubts surrounding the official results, which made him the winner by 3% of the vote. We're taking a short break. Stay with us. In Ukraine, President Volodymyr Zelensky has refused to accept the resignation of Prime Minister Olensky Honkary. After meeting with Honkary in Kiev, Zelensky said he wants to give the Prime Minister another chance. He said this is not the time to shake the country's politics. Honkary offered his resignation after an audio recording suggested he criticized the president. Protesters have clashed with security forces in Chile's capital city, Santiago. Water cannon doused protesters who threw objects at police near the iconic Plaza Italia. Chileans have been protesting for better pensions, healthcare and education since October last year. President Sebastián Piñera approved a referendum on a new constitution in December in an attempt to unify the country. In the meantime, a new opinion poll puts President Piñera's approval rating at only 6%. Only 44% believe the country is a functioning democracy. The manager of the Center for Public Studies, Ricardo Salgado, said it was the worst approval rating of a president since Chile's return to democracy.
This is the worst evaluation a president has had since the return to democracy, since we measured it in the 30-year survey of the Center of Public Studies Public Opinion Program.
Thunderstorms have battered parts of Australia's east coast, causing road closures and flash flooding. Despite the heavy rain, the country is still wrestling nearly 100 bushfires. Major highways have been closed in Queensland, with the state having some of Australia's heaviest rain in months. The storms have caused blackouts in New South Wales. The Bureau of Meteorology says the intense rainfall has eased, but thunderstorms are still possible through the weekend. New Zealand has sent more reinforcements to help fight Australia's bushfires. The blazes have claimed 29 lives and killed an estimated 1 billion animals. Chinese authorities have reported 4 more cases of the new coronavirus. Health officials at the inland city of Wuhan said the patients are in a stable condition. Officials say there have been 41 confirmed cases of the illness since December. Earlier, researchers from London's Imperial College said the number of infected people is likely to be more than officially reported. The virus has spread to Japan and Thailand, with South Korea on alert. The US says it will begin screening passengers arriving on flights from Wuhan at airports in San Francisco, New York, and Los Angeles. China is about to launch 2 geostationary orbit Beidou satellites and a new generation of manned spacecraft as part of its ambitious space program. From missions that return moon samples to Earth to its first Mars probe, China will send more than 60 spacecraft into orbit this year. More about space plans in this report.
Different from the previous Shenzhou vehicles, China's new craft will be bigger, utilizing a 2-cabin structure. It's equipped with re-entry and service modules, which adapt to different missions, such as carrying people or cargo.
It is a future-oriented manned space shuttle. We will try to use some thermal structures and reusable technologies to reduce its operation costs. So basically, with the new technologies, we will expand our capabilities to carry people to and back from space.
As one of the country's 3 major space missions, the Chang'e 5 lunar probe is expected to bring moon samples to Earth. The greatest distance between the Earth and Mars is 400 million kilometers. It means a journey time of 7 months before arriving in Mars orbit in 2021. China's current lunar program is divided into 3 phases: orbiting, landing, and returning, with the first 2 phases already completed.
We temporarily call the follow-up mission as the 4th phase of the Lunar Exploration Program. The preliminary goal we set is to establish a lunar research base through 2 to 3 missions. In the foreseeable future, it will be unmanned scientific research base for the long term, where people would make a short visit.
In addition, 3 new types of carrier rockets, the Long March 5B, Long March 7A, and Long March 8, will make their maiden flights in 2020.
Now let's look at the weather from around the globe. This is all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at indus.news.